Hello, everybody. Hi, Kendall. How are you?
Okay, Chris. My other meeting ended early.
Okay, good. Martina, how are you? Okay. Martina, I think Martina mentioned that she's really not feeling well. So, um, and I'm looking, we don't have a chat function in this meeting setup. So, Martina, as you wish, you sent me a email about where we are with the fair, so I can on brief out on that to folks. If you're feeling well enough to stay on, feel free, but by no means feel like you're obliged to stay. I know you're not feeling well. Teresa, how's it going? Teresa, are you there?
I'm trying to be here.
We hear you.
I'm okay. Things are kind of rough right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. And who do we have online from the community board? This office?
Person, it's Khalid.
Khalid, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Good.
Good.
Matt, welcome. How's it going?
It's going okay. I'm on bedtime duty tonight, but I am available to take notes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. I don't think that today's meeting will go that long. I don't think that it'll even be an hour. Probably be a little bit less than that. So I just want to start off the top and recognize the tragedy that happened on the other side of the park today with the shooting. I know it was a traumatic event for the borough and for our neighbors in Sunset Park, our friends in Sunset Park. So I want to acknowledge it and also open up the floor for a few minutes to see if anyone feels like they need to share anything or would like to comment on it.
I'll just say I hope everyone is safe and all the people you care about are safe.
Thanks, Matt. Is there anyone else that wishes to share any thoughts or feelings?
We also had a tragic fire in my neighborhood this week.
I'm sorry to hear that, Teresa. That's very difficult. Were there were there fatalities or
Everybody survived, but they're all out of their house, and luckily a 9-year-old child learned some fire safety tips in school. I was able to, a 9-year-old, to get everybody out.
okay.
But their house is pretty much gutted, and all the people that were living there, an old family in the neighborhood with a lot of generations.
Do they know the cause, Teresa?
No, it's likely, I guess it started in the wall. Maybe electrical, but I don't
Probably
think,
electrical if it was in the wall.
probably, that's what but they, I mean, probably.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear that, Teresa. That's your neighbor is our neighbor, whether we live on Sullivan or not. And of course, if there's anything that we can do or anything that comes to your mind, um, we're happy to help and happy to support.
I don't know. I guess it would be better if there was some sort of, with the older homes with the electricity, was from the electrical system, if there was a way to inspect houses so that didn't happen.
Yeah. 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 I think there's a lot of work that can be done on that in terms of inspection of buildings and even houses to the extent that that's possible.
For safety. It seems like a lot of the fires that happened are related to electrical issues with, refrigerators or something. Most of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's an ongoing problem. It's an ongoing problem. All right. Well, my thoughts are with your neighbors, Teresa, and I'm glad that we have this space as a committee and as neighbors to come together and work together on shared interests and issues. And I think that's what's needed at this time, especially when you have a tragedy like what happened on the other side of the park earlier today as well. So if anyone has additional thoughts, there'll be time for public discussion later on in the meeting, but I
Well,
did
I
want
found it difficult that there were no cameras in that particular station working.
to.
That's a hard pill to swallow. Like, why did that particular station have no cameras on?
It's a good question.
And people I know that live there, their children can't get home from school today. They're having difficulty getting home. There are people, and it looked like a majority of Asian American people that were hurt.
Mhm.
I had a tooth out yesterday too, a very bad extraction, so I'm in a bit of a mood. So sorry.
That's okay. That's all right. I thank you for sharing, and I think we're all feeling a certain type of way because of the events this morning, and we just have to hang in there and stay together as a community. And if there are ways that we can support that side of the park, I hope that the community board considers that out of solidarity, if nothing else. All right, so let's move forward then. We have, just as a reminder, one of our meeting norms is to respect others when we are on this call. We might not always agree, but it's important that we're respectful to one another. And also, for those that are often in the front, it's helpful at times to be mindful to take a step in the back. And for those that are in the back, you're always welcome to take a step forward and contribute more than you usually do. I'd like to get in then to the second agenda item, which is the review of previous action items. So we last met in March, and I want to thank Kendall for giving me some fodder on the 18-inch rule, because when I then briefed the executive board the following week and then the general board the week after that, we were able to really answer those questions around the 18-inch rule very, very well. So thank you, Kendall, for sharing, for getting that information within days, really, of the meeting. Also, Teresa had an action item, which I believe was to make a recommendation to the board on participating in the Spring Environmental Fair. As we discussed, we are going to pull down the environmental fair that we had planned and instead join the Community Board 9 fair. And we'll get into more specifics about that later on in this meeting, but that action item is taken care of from last month. And then the last thing is that was on my plate, which was to send the letter we drafted and the locations of the 10 receptacles to the district managers. And I sent the letter, and Dante had some edits to it. I reviewed it and gave feedback. There was actually an edit to remove, a suggested edit to remove our recommendation that that DSNY enforce the 18-inch rule. But as I said to the district manager, this is something that our committee voted on. And in fact, actually, even board members who are non-voting in this committee were very supportive of it as well. And then when we brought it to the executive board, there was no controversy or excessive or excess deliberation around that point. So it was important that we kept that recommendation in there, and we kept it in there. So we still have our 5 recommendations. There are some things above and below that letter that have changed in terms of style and syntax, but the heart of the letter is the same. And once the next step, I believe Dante is checking with Fred, but the next step is that the executive board, I believe the next step is that the executive board will just sign off on the letter one last time with these edits, and then it'll go out to council members. So as soon as we have an executive board sign off on it, as an action item for me coming out of this meeting, I will make sure to send that to our committee so we have a copy for ourselves. In terms of the 10 trash receptacles, I sent those locations to Dante as well, and Councilmember Hudson appears interested and ready to fund additional trash receptacles in our district, and she proactively, or her office proactively, reached out to district managers for locations. And because of the work of our committee and the survey that we did, Dante was able to share right away 4 or 5 locations in Councilmember Hudson's district that needs receptacles that their own office had not found. So that's great work. I don't have a timeline from Dante, and to be fair to the district manager, I don't think we really know, or he really knows, in terms of how quickly those baskets will be funded and installed, but it's on the radar of the Councilmember Hudson, and they proactively reached out to us to get those locations, which leads to the other 4 or 5, or I should say 5 or 6 locations, which are in Councilmember Rita Joseph's district. Those I've asked Dante to make sure that we have funds, that CB9 has funds to install and replace those baskets, as this committee had recommended when we first passed that motion, and as the executive board was starting to consider. So stay tuned for that. I haven't got more word from him. That's a note for you, Khalid, in terms of follow-up. We look forward to hearing from Dante in terms of whether or not CB9 could fund these 5 or 6 trash receptacle locations in Councilmember Joseph's district. We think it's important as a committee to have some sort of quick wins here and not put everything to the council members. And we know that CB9 has some funds, and we would be most grateful for allocation of some of those funds to fund 5 or 6 of these trash receptacles while the others go to Councilmember Hudson. So I will raise this in the meeting on Tuesday of next week as well. That's the executive board meeting. Let me stop there. That's the action items from last week, and see what questions we have, if any.
Chris, it's Kendall. A couple just on the 18-inch rule. Can you give us the flavor of that discussion with the full board? Is that new information to people? Was that a reminder? Was that confusion? Whatever. And for what it's worth, I happened to look today at the mayor's management report, and sidewalk violations during COVID were down by about 25% citywide. They average, 60,000 a year. And they were down about 40 to about 45,000. And that's understandable for COVID reasons, I guess, but for what that's worth.
What's your take on that, Kendall? Were those violations down because of lack of enforcement or actually lack of issues?
Probably lack of enforcement personnel.
Yeah, okay. That's helpful. For additional context on the 18th rule, I think Dante's concern was that by asking DSNY to enforce the 18-inch rule and that we would somehow imply that DSNY is not doing their job. And I said, no, in fact, this is a reflection of us as a community, that we ourselves are not doing our work in terms of cleaning up in front of our buildings and our houses. And if we are not doing the job that we're supposed to do as shared members of this community, then DSNY should feel comfortable enforcing the rules that are already on the books. So I just clarified that with him, and I said I don't anticipate any harm to the relationship with DSNY. In fact, I anticipate that we will strengthen our relationship with DSNY, both this committee as well as CB9, as a result of this letter.
Yeah, my take on it is that every council member is putting pressure on DSNY for more enforcement and street cleaning in their districts. That's a universal thing. So there's no way that we need to worry about stepping out of bounds on it, because everyone's doing it. There's a lot of discussion about street baskets, and the more the merrier. As you and I discussed, it did not end up in the participatory budgeting voting for Rita's district. So for what that's worth. And then for those of you who don't follow it, I think we've got a new sanitation commissioner being appointed in the next few days or week or so. Expected it would have been more public by now, but that's going to have a new commissioner to sort of take on some of these challenges. We'll see how that works out.
Interesting. What's your take on the new commissioner, Kendall?
Well, they wanted to go outside the department, and they're the only person whose name ever really got mentioned was Jessica Tisch, who had been commissioner of DoIT, the city's information and technology agency. So she doesn't have any background in waste issues. Comes from a prominent, real estate development family, and so some people think it's sort of, politically, it's a payback to that. But she's got no prior track record, cred, whatever on anything related to waste that we can tell. So it's very much a blank slate. So she's supposed to be a good manager, but DSNY is generally a well-managed agency, because that's what the uniform guys know how to do. So it's not necessarily, don't want to be pessimistic about it, but also there's no vision being made public by the mayor so far about why he's appointing her and what he expects her to do.
Mm-hmm. So somewhat could be a bit of an empty vessel, could be a blank slate, and also an empty vessel for trying to influence and share ideas.
Well, I'd rather, the blank slate is better than the empty vessel right now. So it's an opportunity. That creates an opportunity to shape it. But so
there's also talk of defunding and reducing funding for the sanitation as well as parks. So that's not too pleasing. If there's a way we can support more funding for these important environmental protection groups rather than the NYPD, that's where I'm hoping if there's a way we can work with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I expect the core funding for sanitation will get restored. Again, because there's so much emphasis on street cleanliness and the like. So
Kendall, can you educate us on what's core funding for DS as opposed to non-core?
Yeah, I mean the non-core are things like should the organics collection program be expanded or not? Should some of the organics drop-off sites be expanded or not? Those are sort of programmatic decisions. Core funding is personnel, basically. Having enough bodies to throw at the daily challenge of keeping the city clean. Sanitation had taken some headcount cuts, during COVID, and most of that's been restored. So it's making sure that they just have enough, uh, personnel and equipment to do the daily job.
Right. Sounds like the baseline expectations for
Right.
sanitation.
Yeah, and the council's always gotten into this budget dance with the administration over street baskets, how many, frequency of collection, and the like, and it's an ugly process they have to go through every year, and council members are getting tired of it. But it's the way one of the ways that the budget negotiations has been structured for a very long time. So
And another question is, Khalid, do you know if there's been approval for and the location of the event? I'm not going to be able to participate because it's on a Sunday, not too much, but I just wondered if the location.
Teresa, if I may, we're going to get to that in just the next agenda point.
Oh, okay. I thought you brought it up.
Is there anything else on this letter to council persons and the 10 locations of trash?
Is it complete? I mean, it has to go through the board again, right?
I wouldn't say it needs to go through the board again. It doesn't need to be voted on again. But because there's been some tweaking of the letter around the style and syntax, I think Dante wants to just show it to the executive board one more time to make sure they're fine with it. But I don't anticipate there being, I anticipate that being almost a performative sharing of the letter with them. I don't think there'll be drastic changes.
There is
Yeah,
quite.
there's no need for the board to vote because the board did vote in favor of the original, the draft of the letter that you brought forward before everything went down. But the board did vote in favor, so it's, as you say, it's just a matter of cleaning up the letter and reviews and then sending it out. And there should not have to be another vote after.
There is quite a lot of talk about this letter I'm hearing around from people outside of the community board, just because of the detail and the discussion, the lengthy discussion at the meetings. A lot of people outside of the community board do know about it and are talking about it, and it's all positive as far as I can tell. So I just want to say thank you for being so persistent, everyone in this committee, with that. I think it's done a lot. It's extended itself out, to the world.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. I agree with you 100%. Okay, so that will be an action item for me then, Matt. As you're drafting the notes, I will send the final letter to the committee once it's done. All right, so moving forward then, let's get to agenda item number 4, which is the Spring Environmental Fair update. Martina has been gracious enough to attend the planning meeting on that and help coordinate participation from our stakeholders in the community. I know she's not feeling well this evening, so I'm going to speak on her behalf. She very helpfully sent me an email earlier with a couple of updates on it. And to your question, Teresa, we can start there. There is no location chosen just yet. Dante anticipates that they'll have a location by the end of this week, but we do know that Prospect Park is not an option because we couldn't get a permit for it because they didn't want to have 2 events going on in Prospect Park at the same time. So we don't have a location just yet. The date is the same. And then in terms of the next planning meeting, that is also to be determined. We have with with Martina's help and Charlita as well, who's not on the call today, but Martina and Charlita as well as Dante have reached out to DSNY for their participation, Department of Environmental Protection for their participation. It looks like we'll have some rain barrels that we're going to give away to neighbors who want to have a rain barrel in the back of their home or their buildings. And then Martina got strong interest also with Kendall's help on the Maple Street Garden. They will participate in this event. So the only last one that we're really waiting on is Grow NYC. And I think Charlita was looking into that. But
What about the rat?
we did not include rat. That was not one of the ones that,
Contacted them and they were quite interested, remember? But you know, I was waiting for location because of I just didn't feel that was the park didn't seem like a good option. But they were very interested. And remember, I don't know if you remember, but I sent notes. The person who I spoke to, they just wanted a table and chairs.
yeah.
And they were very interested in doing work in this neighborhood.
Yeah. I have not reached out to them. I don't think that anyone else on this committee has reached out to them in terms of the CB9 wide fair. I want to be mindful of who's doing what in terms of cooks in the kitchen. And so I think and Martina is really leading on this now. She's volunteered and she's working on it. So Martina, if you would like to reach out to Rad Academy, then I would just ask that you and Teresa get together offline so Teresa can give you their contact information. And you can reach out to them the same way that you were in touch with Maple Street Garden. Then if Rad Academy would like to participate, then we just have to let CB9 know. But does that sound good, Martina? Are you able to raise your hand just for confirmation? Raise your hand on in the chat function. It's written next to breakout sessions.
I see two little.
Okay, great, awesome. Thank you, Martina. Good. So we have a way forward with that. And I think that's really it. I mean, I submitted the budget request on behalf of CB9. I kept it pretty basic. We just asked for a couple of tables, a couple of chairs, water. Martina and I discussed tablecloths as well. Frankly, I don't recall where we landed on that, but that may be included in part of our request. And we'll see. We're waiting for CB9 to organize the next planning meeting. Any questions about that? Kendall, did you want to say something? I couldn't tell.
Oh, sorry, it's still on Sunday the 24th?
The date hasn't changed. Yeah, May.
Okay. I'm hoping the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board will have a table as well. And I'm waiting to hear back from the folks that might do that about their availability.
Okay. Sounds good. It's May 22nd, Kendall. I'm just looking again.
Okay, thank you.
I
But it's,
thought it was the 17th.
No, the 17th is a Tuesday. It's May 22nd. If that board would like to participate, Kendall, could you just put them in touch with Martina?
yeah,
Thank you. All right. If there are any further questions or comments on this Spring Community Board 9 Fair? All right, well, that brings us to public discussion. Sorry, go ahead, Kendall, did you have something? No, okay. Public discussion, that's the fifth item on the agenda. We do not have members of the public here today, but I would like to open up the floor to the committee for anything that you'd like to discuss.
Chris, there's been a lot of chatter about this district-wide sort of cleanup event on the 22nd. It's spring, so everybody wants to organize cleanup events. And that one sort of popped up, which is great, but no one knew that it was coming. And so I'm generally aware that there's some blocks in our neighborhood that we're targeting like May 7th or May 14th for cleanups, but those are mostly on the side streets. The 22nd thing is on the avenues. So, I don't personally think there's a conflict with them, but just that it caught some people by surprise and trying to figure out how to organize in support of it.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Kendall. What other thoughts do we have on that? Other folks? I think that's an important point that Kendall raised.
And what?
So Kendall raised the Earth Day cleanup, which is Friday, April 22nd. And it's also during the last day of spring break for a lot of children in New York City. And Kendall was saying that in Prospect Lefferts Gardens in particular, there are some block associations that are doing their own cleanups either before or after that date. And the date that was chosen of Friday, April 22nd, caught some folks by surprise. That's what he just said.
Okay, I understand now. Our block association is doing our event on Saturday, May 21st.
Okay.
That's I had to get a permit and signatures for that and apply for it 60 days in advance to get the street closure permit. You have to do 60 days in advance, even for these small just so people know, if you're planning any other cleanups for this particular cleanup permit, it's 60 days, 4 hours. And I've got that. I just have to, I have all my, I'm just looking at the paper and that's why I made a mistake with the date. I'm sorry. But it's the 21st. For some reason, I was thinking 16th and the other thing was the 17th. I don't know. Hey,
Yeah.
the other thing I'm going to ask is I know one time we were asked to help in the park with some cleanup that we were going to do it as a community board. And we were asked to participate maybe a month or so ago. And then I didn't write it down and I didn't have the date, but I thought that would be great to do and I would do it if it weren't conflicting, especially not on a Sunday. Like on
Yeah.
a Saturday.
We didn't have enough interest in that, so I didn't revert back to Dante to say that we would join as a committee. What I'm hearing from you and from Kendall is that there's a lot of interest in our neighborhoods of doing cleanups and not just interest, but even action. And I wonder if it might be something for our committee to consider next year in September to do a real thoughtful, coordinated sort of environmental protection committee kickoff event and have it be a cleanup because I think there could be more coordination done both between our committee and other committees and our committee and the district office and some of the block associations.
Well, I feel like our event, our neighborhood event, it's called a cleanup because that's the permit thing, but we've actually do it as a renewal and we've spent more time and it's really, make a significant difference in our neighborhood with it's more about planting, getting the extra planters together. And we've gotten a couple of grants in past years. So it's really helped. So I don't know if there's a way to do that. I'm like increasing the greenage, I think is more important than cleaning up almost, because the more care you put into having the plants and the trees and taking care of them, I think kind of one leads into another, where people develop like a caring for the place that they're in or walking through, so they're less likely to dump or throw or
Yep.
mistreat it. They feel love when, this is my idea anyway, and my neighbors, is they feel loved when they're there. They feel loved, they feel cared for, they feel like, wow, this is a good place to walk down the street. So they're more likely to treat it well and feel good when they're there. And I think it extends to more and more blocks when you do it.
That's a
That's
great
my,
point. I mean, Lefferts Manor has a annual ritual of doing a planting of the flower barrels in tree pits in early May, and the Manor Association provides the flowers for that. So we combine that with the cleaning. There are some cities that do sort of citywide, spring cleanup events that are pretty well structured and organized. So we might, it's a, Chris, your suggestion, we might take a look at some of those over the winter and think about something like that in the spring. A bunch of things you can layer onto that as well.
Yeah.
what about a program with like having some sort of stewards? Like at one point there was a stewards for trees. There's a man in my neighborhood named Cliff who, as on Rogers, who has planted numerous pits and plants and cleans up and is very adamant about getting with all of us over here to promote that. If there were more people like if we could get more people involved somehow in some kind of program like that, stewardship or caring for things, like not just on your block either. I don't know. That's just an idea, if we could somehow do that. What do you think?
I think there's a lot of ways to get organized, and there's a general interest, and there's some great work that's being done. The key with all this is always staying organized and being coordinated. And I think that with this thing on April 22nd, and that's actually a question I want to pose to the committee. This thing on April 22nd is coming up. Is there an interest from our committee? It is a work day. It is a Friday. Is there an interest from the committee of volunteering a few hours that day to help clean up one block in our district, one of the avenues in our district?
Well, the flyer for that day targeted specific stretches of avenues. So I think it's sort of dependent on where we live and helping out on those particular areas. I don't recall if there was a sign up thing they wanted people to do or whatever, but or how that's going to be organized that day. But that's when we were looking at it last night for the Lefferts Manor Association board. That's what we were sort of focused on, is the particular avenue stretches.
Yeah, April 22nd is spring break.
Yeah, it's a Friday. I know kids are off of school.
Yeah, I won't be. I probably, hopefully, won't be here.
Hopefully you won't be here. You don't like Brooklyn, Teresa?
No, but it's like I have an 11th grader, and we're trying to visit some family and do some college touring.
Oh, that's nice.
So hopefully we can
Good.
make that week is the only week we can do it.
Okay.
The summer.
All right.
But
Matt,
I would something another day. I would love to do something on a Saturday. Like, I think it would be a great community thing to just do anything together, with the board members, even just even for an hour.
Yeah. Well, let's continue to talk about that. I mean, we only have 2 more meetings left this year before we break for the summer. We have one meeting in May and then the last meeting in June. And one thing I would like to do in one or both of those meetings is have us start to reflect back on what we've done in this last year, but also more importantly, think about where we want to go in the fall of 2022 up until the spring of 2023. So I think keep that idea at the front of your mind, Teresa. I think that'll be one item that our committee may want to organize around and put a date on the calendar. I also want to make sure, Matt, I know you're on daddy duties tonight, but just want to check in with you and see if you have any thoughts on all the discussion that we're having.
A few notes, some of them tangential. On the cleanup day, you asked if people were taken off guard by that or taken by surprise by it, and then you mentioned the fact that it was on a weekday during the day. That's the part that took me off guard. Our block, Rutland between Flatbush and Bedford, did this maybe 6 or 7 months ago on a Sunday morning. And we got a lot of people. I don't know what the thought was behind doing it in the middle of the day during the week. But yeah, that's the time that's just not available to me. Regarding enforcement, it's I know this is NYPD and not DSNY, but I've noticed an increase in alternate side enforcement. I don't know if anyone else has. This is entirely anecdotal, entirely based on my observation, but I see them a lot. I see police out a lot more walking the block during alternate side time. I see a lot more red envelopes on windshields. What else? I have managed at the beginning of our season, I guess, back in September, I was assigned to look into rain gardens. I managed to track down, with your help, Chris, the head of the rain garden program, and she's incredibly helpful. I think, given my inability these days with the newborn to give like a big presentation during these meetings, I might put together something that you all can read, maybe like the ABCs of rain gardens and alternative green infrastructure for stormwater diversion that will help everyone understand how it works and what they're planning for our neighborhood. I guess that you could say that's a stretch goal of mine. But I came away from my conversation with her really confident in what they're doing. A couple months ago, I mentioned that the projects they have planned for our neighborhood are mostly not rain gardens, but are instead some subterranean infrastructure. And it turns out that what they're planning, while not as beautiful as a rain garden, is actually more, it has a greater effect on relieving water from storm drains and alleviating the risk of stormwater, combined sewer overflow than a rain garden does. I think those are all the things I wanted to share in this short window I had, which was a very good time for you to call me, Chris. So thank you. I can take any questions anyone has about that if all of that made sense.
Matthew, thank you for that. It's been a while since I talked to the DEP folks, but I wasn't. Maybe they were clear with you about whether or not we are in a target area for their efforts, or they've got other areas that are sort of more important for them for various reasons. Were they clear about that, whether we're in or out?
So they've got an online GIS map that has a lot of data about all the installed projects and all the planned ones. All of the installed projects for Brooklyn are mostly east of here. I'd say like, I guess east and south, the obvious ones, Marine Park, Canarsie, and then you've got places like East New York, Bushwick. All of the planned ones for this calendar year are almost entirely in our district. So, we're next. And I'd say most of those are Nostrand and eastward. Some toward Rogers, but Bedford, I'd say Rogers is the western cutoff. But there are many planned for our district this year.
Well, that's a good update. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll send that map with a screenshot of our district and all the ones planned after this call. Any other questions?
Oh, sorry, that's not, sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Well, Matt and others, the context from why talking to DEP about it was that my block was thinking about a sort of a block-wide sidewalk replacement upgrade, thing that we would do together. Because a number of homes get these, the spring tickets from DOT about sidewalk repairs and the like that never get enforced, but that give people something to talk about. And so I'm thinking about if we're going to do a sidewalk upgrade, what are the things that we want to take into account? And one of them is proper location and sizing of tree pits and bioswales and EV charging and a couple other things. And so trying to put together sort of a comprehensive plan for, that would last us, 20 years and doing all the right things now. So that's why I had talked to DEP about that, and it didn't appear at the time that we were in that target area, and they didn't have much to suggest for us to consider.
So my only reaction there is that I'd be surprised. And I think you know more about this than I do. I guess I'm kind of surprised by the suggestion that all of the sidewalk stakeholders, sanitation, parks, DEP, probably DOT, might have a cohesive plan that we could assist with. Am I making sense?
You're suggesting what?
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I in fact, just a couple days ago, I was asking someone about a sidewalk tree, and I know that's parks, but I guess the particular question I asked of parks about a sidewalk tree made them say, "Oh, no, you need to talk to DOT about that."
Yeah.
And that's
So yeah,
just with trees. And now you're talking about EV charging, and I'm thinking, wow, um, like I wouldn't even know where to begin putting together a singular plan that all of those agencies could get behind.
Well, I'll keep you posted on our progress. I think I sort of let it sit for a year or two, and we may revive it this spring. But I did talk to Parks about that, and can they come in and do an assessment of the condition of our trees and which ones are healthy or not, and replacements and the like. And they wanted us to hire an arborist to do it, which we don't have the resources to do. Yeah, but things like, some of the tree pits are not properly sized. And if you're replacing the sidewalk, then you can correct that. Some of them tree pits you might want to shift a little bit so they're away from gas lines, which is an impediment to planting a tree. So we're just looking at, those kinds of issues. If we do something collectively as a block that we could address. And then to top it off with looking at low emission concrete. There's a lot of new materials and effort in the concrete industry to sort of green its products, and we could take advantage of that as well. So
I've seen some, I don't know if they're market ready, but some porous hardscapes that people are designing for as sidewalk and asphalt alternatives, so that they
yeah,
absorb rainwater instead of just having it flow into the
yep,
storm drain.
yep.
I hope I didn't misinterpret what you were saying, but it I would like to be involved in that. I don't know what I can contribute, but it's a subject of interest to me. So,
Okay, good,
yeah, please put me in the loop.
good to know. Okay.
Kendall, if there was a situation, as far as you're aware, and maybe this is something you've experienced on your block, but if there was a tree pit that was planted in it, and later the city agencies find out that there's a gas line underneath, and so you can't actually plant a tree there, what does the process look like, as far as you know or can tell, to change the location of that tree pit in order to plant?
Well, again, our personal experiences, we had a maple tree in front of our house that demised a number of years ago, and we asked to have it replaced, and the stump removed and have it replaced, and they said no, we couldn't because there was a gas line underneath it. So our only option is to move the tree pit when we redo the sidewalk, and which I don't think would be a big deal in the course of doing that, and that would eliminate that constraint on having a new tree planted in front of our house. So I don't think that's a common problem, but I think it's it's something that you gotta pay some attention to, because you don't want to do anything to damage or disrupt the gas line. So
Yeah, yeah. I had a similar situation.
yeah, I mean, moving it away from sewer lines is a good idea too, so you don't get the root infiltration. That's a little harder to do, but
So you're suggesting that when you redo the sidewalk on your block, then that would be the time when the city would change the location of the tree pit?
well, we would change it in whatever plan we put together with the sidewalk contractor. I actually did a map of my block just on an Excel spreadsheet showing locations of tree pits and trees and where they are missing or need to be moved or whatever else, so we have sort of a baseline to work from. But that's where we sort of got stalled out, and I was waiting. DOT's been testing some residential street EV chargers. They're not ready for prime time yet, but just looking at that possibility as well and what that would look like. None of us have garages, so having the ability to recharge electric vehicles would mean some sort of street post placement. So although that's coming, and just trying to sort of think ahead to designing all that in at this stage, or wait a year until it's ready, so whatever. So
I've investigated that a bit in pertaining to putting on a solar roof and working it so you could charge a electric vehicle, EV. And I don't know about that. I do have a garage, by the way, shared driveway. So not as easy as one would have it be to say
Yep.
use your own solar power to charge a battery. It's also, we can't have batteries in the city. It has to go through the grid and come back out. So
Yep.
I want to be mindful of time. I think this is a good discussion, and it's nice to also have a a meeting where we don't have to run through so many things. But I do want to help us get out of here on time. I just want to I just want to quickly go back to something Matt said. Well, three things that he said. Matt, I also have noticed a lot of more enforcement of alternate street side parking, which is something that I had spoke to the NYPD community affairs officer and also sanitation about. So I'm happy to hear that you're seeing that on your block as well. And I want to ask you if, I mean, you have a lot on your plate, maybe even on your lap, literally. But would you feel comfortable and have the availability to put together ABCs or one pager on rain gardens, maybe even with a recommendation for how you see our committee taking forward that issue next year? Do you think that that'd be something you'd have time to do between now and May?
It's a stretch goal of mine. I think I call it 50-50. I'm hoping to be able to do it.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate your interest in it. I think it's a great idea to bring more rain gardens, and I would love to learn more about the topic. If you need any help with anything, just let me know. And then I want to go back to the first thing Matt said, which is in terms of the date for the CB9 lead litter pickup. This is really for you, Khalid. How did we come up with that date of a Friday? I know that's Earth Day, but how did we choose a Friday as opposed to a Saturday or Sunday?
I'll actually have to ask the office, or at least Dante, because as far as I'm mostly aware, it is a joint effort with other elected officials and city city agencies and private entities as well. So it might have been that that was a date that was more feasible for the sponsors on the flyer, and that's the only answer I have for you at this time. And regarding Kendall's inquiry earlier, in terms of how to be a part of it, really, constituents can just reach out to the office, let us know. Well, we have a group of n number of individuals, and we'd actually like to clean this section of the district here. So it doesn't have to only be the avenues. It can be a segment that you and your team are comfortable with and know better in terms of what needs to be cleaned. It's just a matter of sending the office the information.
Okay.
you.
So
Well, for what it's worth, in this district, Friday also avoids a conflict with Shabbat on Saturdays. So
Correct. We also consider that. Yeah, well, usually, mostly, we try to consider that as well. If it's an event that, like I said, that is mostly sponsored by city agencies or elected officials, and if X date is preferred, then we'll go with what the majority is. But yes, we try to also acknowledge religious observance.
So I'll leave it up to committee members then. If you'd like to join this initiative, reach out to the district managers and staff offline. The number is included in the flyer. I did forward the information to our committee, so you have it. But I think with the timing of it being on a Friday, it's a little bit hard for us to organize as a committee and say 3 or 4 or 5 of us on this committee are going to pitch in and all be on the same block at the same time. But it's a worthy initiative, and if it's something that you'd like to see or work on, please feel free to reach out to the district office on your own. With that being said, I'd like to move forward to the 6th agenda point, which is any other business. And this is really something that you just have to get it off your chest. You're not going to sleep well tonight if you don't share this with our committee. Really, it's just a burning issue that you don't know what to do unless you talk about it. Any other business at this point for us to cover?
I'm just gonna bring up one thing. That pigeon situation on Empire Boulevard is still open, and so much pigeon, something broke in the facade, and there's so much pigeon feces, like a belt of pigeon feces fell into the street, and it's blowing all over, and it's never gonna get dealt with. And that really bothers me. I feel like it's unsafe to even walk on the street.
Thank you for sharing. I'd recommend putting in a 311.
I've put in many 311s. My 311 has been left open, my last 311, which has been for more than a year.
Okay.
I've contacted the community board about it, and they're aware, Dante knows, and nothing. There's,
Next
if I
time,
put in another 311, it won't go through because there's one that's open.
okay, so take the one that you last submitted that's open, get that number, send it to Dante, copy me on the email.
I did. I've done that. It's been like months and months since I've done that.
You copied me on the email, Teresa? I'm sorry. I don't
I don't think I copied you. It was before I was in this committee.
Okay. Well, send another one if you don't, if you'd like, send another one to Dante and the district managers and staff. Copy me on the email, and if you don't hear anything, I'm happy to follow up. Any other business, any other burning issues? Sorry, I know you said you can't send another one because you have one that's already open. So maybe take the one that's already open, send it to CB9, copy me on the email, and I can follow up with it if needed. All right, everybody. The time is 8:04. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your participation. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.